Welcome. My name is James Milan, and we are here with David D'Arcangelo, who is the Republican candidate for Secretary of State. Thanks for participating.
Thanks for having me.
Before we begin, let's review the format for the interview. This will be a live-to-tape interview, and that means no edits once we begin. There was no pre-screening of questions, and answers will be limited to 2 minutes each. We will start with a 1-minute opening statement from the candidate, and after the questions, we will conclude with a 1-minute closing statement. Mr. D'Arcangelo, you have 1 minute for an opening statement.
James, thanks so much. And thank you, viewers, for allowing me to be in your living room with you tonight. It's David D'Arcangelo. I'm a 2-time elected Malden City Councilor at large, running for Secretary of State. I'm running to modernize an office that's been running the same way for 20 years. I'm running to increase transparency in an office that's really been kind of cloaked in darkness. So I want to be your Secretary of State to open up an office and bring in modern features with transparency. I'm also unique in a way. I'm legally blind. I've been legally blind my whole life. So I think it's time for a person with a disability to serve in statewide office, which I don't know if that's ever happened before. So I'm trying my best, running around this state. It's great to be with you today. I'm looking forward to talking with James and answering any and all questions. Please check out my website, daveinto2014.com, to find out more. But thank you again for letting me be here, to Arlington Access and everybody involved.
Thank you. And let's get right to the questions.
Sure.
First question is, why are you running for Secretary of State, and what prepares you for, what prepares you to serve in that capacity?
I'm running to open up an office that's been running the same way for 20 years in the darkness, and really they're pushing paper up there. And in this day of technology, so many more things need to be modernized, and we need to have a government that's transparent and accountable for the people. Perfect example, the current secretary got a grade of F when it comes to transparency in government. That's unacceptable. I want to turn that F into an A. We've been pushing paper up there for years, and so many of the forms and the procedures and things, they're really just antiquated and they need to be updated. And again, don't just believe me. Look at the National Freedom of Information Coalition, which gave Massachusetts an F for transparency in government. And so much of that has to do with our antiquated processes. So my platform is pretty straightforward and simple. I want to modernize an operation that's been working the same way for 20 years, and I want to make it more transparent and open to you, the people. They're your documents. This is your government. We need to do everything we can to make it open and accountable. I'll give you a perfect example of that. 112 days ago, I asked the Secretary of State for public records, and he stonewalled me for the entire 112 days. We go back and forth with certified letters. Finally, he sends me a letter and says, Dave, I don't even know if these documents exist, but you know what? I'll look for them. Send me a check for $5,300. That's outrageous. Those are your documents. They're my documents. We deserve to know how much he spent on himself to be in these public service announcements over the years. That's what my questions were about. How much did it cost to produce the ads? How much did it cost to air them? He doesn't want to tell us. He doesn't want to tell us because it's going to make him look bad, quite frankly. And again, in this era of technology, all of this information should be online, should be readily accessible. We should have a modern, transparent office. Right now we don't. We have an antiquated office that's hiding documents. That's unacceptable. That's why I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you. Do you believe that the Secretary of State, as the manager of public records, has been aggressive in bringing greater transparency to state and local government, as you've been talking about? Please give us specific examples to justify your answer.
Sure. Yeah, he has not been transparent at all and just really hasn't done a good job of it. Whether you look at the National Freedom of Information Coalition, that ranking, you look at some of the other metrics, like for example, to do business in this state, one of the things that the Secretary of State is responsible for is the Corporations Division as the role of Chief Information Officer. The Corporations Division is the one that sets all the fees for businesses and corporations looking to do business here in Massachusetts. I bet you wouldn't be surprised to learn that we rank among the highest in the nation in terms of the amount of fees that we produce. There's 40 pages of fees that companies have to pay every year. For example, a corporation, or depending upon what type of corporation you are, some corporations, it's $500 a year to register your corporation. Well, what are you getting for that? All you're really doing is building the bureaucracy there. They send you a piece of paper that you can put on your wall. I want to invest in Massachusetts business so that they can invest in our people. It's all about jobs, bringing jobs back to our state. The old argument that they like to make up on Beacon Hill is, oh, it's only the cost of a cup of coffee a day. Well, how many different cups of coffee do you expect to drink? Because they keep asking for a cup of coffee here, a cup of coffee there, and they're nickel and diming you and business. And at the end of the day, that's why we have one of the highest costs of doing business in the country that keeps businesses from investing and reinvesting in Massachusetts. I want to take those barriers down, make it easier for companies to hire and use that money. That $500, they could be used to buy another piece of equipment, pay for education for an employee, or give somebody a bonus for doing a great job. So I know, as a small business owner myself, how important that money is, and it needs to go back to the businesses, not to the bureaucracy.
Thank you very much. Would you say that the Secretary of State has provided effective enforcement oversight of the Massachusetts Uniform Securities Act? And again, please give specific examples to justify your answer.
Yeah, anybody here who has a 401k, a retirement plan, a pension, unfortunately, Bill Galvin has cost you money. Your retirement has been affected, and affected adversely because of Bill Galvin. Let me explain that. So what happens is he's responsible for the oversight of the securities and exchange industry. And what I've heard from countless members in that industry, regulators, businesses, everybody involved with securities and 401ks and pension funds and things like that, is that Bill Galvin has really been a hindrance to him. And his office, this kangaroo court atmosphere that he has when it comes to securities and exchange, where you're guilty until proven innocent with the system he's set up. And how does that affect you? That affects you because Putnam and Fidelity and all these other companies that get regulated by his office, now they have to go defend these lawsuits. Now look, is 1 out of 100 a good lawsuit that the Secretary might have done a good job on? Perhaps. But you know what? 99 of the other ones could have been solved, but what does he want to do? He's just trying to grab headlines. You know, he uses this one example of like Teleflex from Brazil. That's an obvious scam. Like, oh, great job for finding that out. Anybody would have found that out, right? So he wants to say he's protecting, but at the end of the day, what he's doing is he's driving up costs. Don't just believe me. Go online, go to my website, davin2014.com. We have plenty of information to back that up. So again, if you talk to anybody in the industry, they'll tell you what a hindrance Bill Galvin has done. And really, he's just raised costs of doing business for these funds. We don't need that. We need to make it easier for people to invest. We need to make it easier for these companies to do business in Massachusetts. So with him, you're going to get more of the same. With me, you're going to get a new, fresh way, a streamlined way of doing things. It's time to modernize and be more transparent.
Thank you very much. Do you think the Secretary of State has been an effective advocate on behalf of citizens filing investor complaints? Again, we would like some specific examples.
Yeah, sure. I mean, look at case after case, unfortunately. If you just Google Bill Galvin and Securities and Exchange, you'll see problem after problem here. And again, it's this attitude that him and his office have, this kangaroo court atmosphere, where they want the headlines. The Secretaries of State's Securities and Exchange Division, they want the headlines and they want to show, oh, look what we're doing to prosecute. But at the end of the day, all they're really doing is kind of going after the low-hanging fruit. They're not really getting any of the real problems out of the system. And specifically what I'm going to tell you is that if you look at like the Cranny case, if anybody wants to Google Cranny case and Bill Galvin, what he did was basically put this man in financial ruin because he claimed he was running a Ponzi scheme when he didn't even do the findings of fact first. It's outrageous. So usually there's due process. And I think everybody here would agree that you first have to find out the facts and then put people through the process. With him, it was guilty from day one. And what did he do? The people who ended up investing in that organization now have lost all their money because he led them through a path and he won't even give them their day in court. That's the worst part about it. He won't even let them be heard in front of the Securities and Exchange Division and to give them an answer and all the investors an answer of, hey, why were we found to be in violation of whatever it is you're saying we were? Like, they never even had a chance to hear it out. So again, if you just Google that, people will find out on their own that the way that office is being run it's just not modern. It's not transparent. It's not with the times. He's got bureaucrats in there instead of industry people. The communication needs to be much better on that. And again, you can go to my website. I have a much more detailed answer from some of the questionnaires that I filled out from the League of Women Voters, Rosie's Place, some of the other questionnaires. that have much more detail.
Okay, thank you. And moving to another aspect of the Secretary of State's scope, has the Secretary of State been a constructive supervisor of elections? And again, the more specific examples, the better.
Sure, sure. Well, I wish I could say, all these things you're asking me, I wish I could say he's done a good job. He really hasn't. I mean, after 20 years, it's awful. His record is like deplorable at this point. Don't believe me. Look at the Department of Justice that called him in and said, you didn't report military ballots appropriately. You were in non-compliance. I mean, that's outrageous. Our brave servicemen and women who are serving for us, he's making it more difficult for them to vote, and then he's not even reporting the results the right way? That's outrageous. Again, don't believe me. You can go to my website. You'll see from the Department of Justice right there the finding. That's their press release, not mine. So the other thing is I bring credibility. Let's forget Bill Galvin for a second. Let's talk about my positive attributes that I bring. I've been an election officer for the city of Boston, where I've been an inspector, a clerk, and a warden. I was a warden during the last presidential election. So I've actually opened up a polling location, run the polling location during the day, and then break the polling location down, report the results, and have the integrity of the voting process in a very hands-on nature. He can never say he's done that. He's never done that. He's been a bureaucrat and behind the scenes his whole life. He's a lawyer, Beacon Hill, insider, good old boy network type of guy. So when it comes to that, and here's the other thing about elections. He's done these public service announcements over the years where he's appeared in them. And he's supposedly been trying to get people to register to vote. Well, the data we have indicates that voter registration has been flat. So Bill, if you've been using all this taxpayer money to register people to vote, but you haven't been getting people to register to vote, why'd you keep spending the money? Because there's kids in schools that need that money. There's developmentally disabled people that need that money. There's seniors that need that money. There's veterans that need that money. And again, the argument is, oh, it's just the cost of a cup of coffee a day. Matters to me, it should matter to you.
Thank you very much. I know you've spoken about this already as part of your answers, but what do you think is the appropriate role of state government in dealing with the economy and job growth? And what are the biggest issues facing the Massachusetts economy? And what policy priorities would you support to address those?
Sure. Depending upon what metric you look at, if you look at Pioneer Institute, if you look at some of the national figures from the government themselves, depending upon what metric you look at, we're ranked, we Massachusetts are ranked anywhere between 42nd and 48th in terms of cost of doing business. We have a highly educated workforce here. We have a very diverse economy. We have so many great attributes for us. We shouldn't be ranked near the bottom of anything. And, so what government needs to do is government needs to get out of the way. We need to take those 40 pages of fees and boil them down to a couple of pages. We need to take all of the fees that are being charged right now and reduce that amount. Because unless you can show me that those fees are going to a specific thing like a workforce fund or some loan program that's going to help business. Unfortunately, you can't do that. What ends up happening is those fees, what do? They go to perpetuate the bureaucracy. And that's all it's doing. So we need to have government scale back, get out of the way, reduce the fees, reduce the regulations, and let business boom here in Massachusetts, which it can. There's no reason our employment rate should be even lower than it is. We should be able to have, the most compassionate thing we can do for anybody is give them a job and give them a way out of their situation if they want that. Right now we can't. We're hampered. Businesses are hampered. All the businesses I tour around the state are saying, Dave, when is government going to let me just do my business here? Their hand is in my pocket for everything. They're trying to get me on every regulation here. I mean, they want me to I was with a business yesterday where he got fined $7,000 because the sign he had, instead of saying hazardous waste, said hazardous material. So instead of letting him change the sign out, they fine him $7,000. That's outrageous. That's outrageous. And that's just one example. And there's just a litany of them. So we need to have government get out of the way, reduce the fees, reduce the regulations, let business prosper.
Thank you. Next question is a deceptively simple one, I would say. What makes you the best candidate?
I'm the best candidate for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think my perspective of having worked in government, right? So I've served 3 governors, I've worked in the state legislature. I was appointed by Governor Romney to the Mass Commission for the Blind Rehabilitation Council. I was reappointed by Governor Patrick. So if I was just some ideologue politico That never would have happened. I'm a public policy person, have been, went to school up at Suffolk University, so I understand government very well. Yet I'm not a creature of Beacon Hill like Bill Galvin is. The guy I'm running against has been on Beacon Hill his entire adult life. He's been secretary for 20 years. He ran for statewide office before that. He was a state representative before that. So he's been up there his entire adult life. I've worked in the private sector. I know what it's like to run a budget and be responsible for bottom line dollar decisions that have to be made. He's used to just spending other people's money, your money, the taxpayers' money. Like when he's used these millions of dollars on these public service announcements on himself. 4 years ago, when Tim Cahill was running for governor, the Attorney General at the time, Martha Coakley, prosecuted him for doing really kind of the same thing. He didn't even appear in the commercials. Bill Galvin's appeared in these commercials over the years, and everybody just shrugs their shoulders and says, oh, well, that's the way it should be. No. So I'm the best candidate because I will value the taxpayer's dollar very much, and I will make sure that we have a government that's open, that's transparent, and that's accountable to you, the people. I'm a city councilor at large in Malden, and I know that the people in Malden, they're my boss. So when I get elected Secretary of State, I'll be very clear on that. You will be my boss. Absolutely, 100% you will be my boss. So, I'm accountable to the people, and I think that's what he's lost. That's the perspective that I have. That's why I'm looking for your vote. That's why I think I'm the best candidate.
Thanks. Can you please give us one example of an issue that you and your opponent actually agree on, and then two examples of issues on which you differ, and why your own positions represent the best interests of the Commonwealth?
Yeah, sure. I think we both agree that the system needs to be changed. Here's the difference, though. He's had 20 years to change it, and he hasn't done it. So it's just rhetoric. It's just empty rhetoric for him. For me, I really want to go in there, roll up my sleeves, fundamentally change the way we're doing business up there. They're pushing paper up there. That's crazy. We need to modernize things, So that's really the best answer I have for you. Now, in terms of where we differ, I think we differ on a number of different things. Again, I believe that transparency, what did Judge Brandeis say? Sunlight is the best disinfectant, right? So I believe we need to open it up, let the sun shine in, be as transparent as possible. Again, these documents, as Chief Information Officer for the state, which that's what you are as Secretary of State, Chief Information Officer for the state, you need to have government that's open and accountable and available. Right now, when I have to appeal for my public records request, I have to appeal to him. And what's he done? Ignored me. That's not right. So we need to strengthen the public records law. That's one of the major things we need to do. And we need to put some teeth in it to be able to have some enforcement of it. Because right now, what am I going to do? He's ignored me. I keep sending him registered letters. He doesn't respond. Yet the Secretary of State, he's the one who's supposed to be the custodian of all these records. It's crazy. As your next Secretary of State, I will make sure that all the records are public, open, and accountable. It's not that way now. It will be that way under me. And that's something, whether you're liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican, doesn't matter. My message appeals to everybody. And again, he might say one thing, but remember, he's had 20 years to put this in practice. Don't just believe me, believe the national watchdog group, the National Freedom of Information Coalition, that gave him an F when it comes to this stuff. So it's pretty simple. I want to open up a government, modernize it, make it more transparent. He says he does, but in practice, he just hasn't got it done.
Thanks very much. And final question is, what strategies would you use for working with members of other parties and with those of opposing views? And what experience do you have implementing these strategies?
Sure. I'm a city councilor at large in Malden. I'm going to tell you, we don't always agree, but at the end of the day, we're in government to work for the people. We're trying to improve the human condition here. I recognize that. I understand that. And I want to work with others to build consensus. Here's a specific example I'll give you. I don't know if it's ever been done before, but myself and the Green Rainbow candidate just co-signed a letter last week asking the secretary to debate. He's ignored us. So here's an example of me working with somebody else who has different views, and we'll agree to disagree. But we've been very civil. We've had very great conversations about ways to be able to improve the Commonwealth. We'd love to hear from the secretary. He's ignoring us. Matter of fact, over 20 years, he's only debated one time. He debated one time, and that was 12 years ago. That's outrageous. You voters out there should expect more. Whether you're Democrat, Republican, Doesn't matter. Unenrolled voter, you should expect more out of your elected officials. I didn't give him his nickname up on Beacon Hill. That's the way he operates, unfortunately. He operates in the darkness and just kind of lurks around and shrugs his shoulders and there's nothing to see here. Well, okay, what do you say when you come home with your report card to the voters and you just got an F for transparency? What do you say to the military service and women when you get sued by the Justice Department or taken to court by the Justice Department, however you want to phrase it, for non-compliance with reporting military balloting? That's outrageous. We have the technology to be able to have people vote instantaneously. He's refused to embrace it. He's operating in the dark ages over there. He's pushing paper. It's antiquated. I want to modernize an office. I want to make it more transparent for you, the voters, and really for the entire public, because at the end of the day, you're my boss and I'm accountable to you. So that's a couple of the things I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be a positive campaign here. It's a challenge sometimes when you're running against somebody who doesn't even want to answer you.
Thank you very much, and that closes the segments or the questions portion of this interview. You now have 1 minute for a closing statement.
All right, great. Thank you so much, and thank you again. It's David Darkangelo running for Secretary of the Commonwealth. I'm very pleased to be with you, and I hope you understand the stark differences between myself and the current Secretary Galvin. I want to open up an office, make it modern and more transparent. He's had 20 years to do it. He hasn't done it. So he may say he's done things or he wants to do things. At the end of the day, he hasn't gotten it done. Don't just believe me. Look at the national watchdog group, the National Freedom of Information Coalition. They're the nonpartisan watchdog group that looks over all of the states in terms of transparency and accountability in government and freedom of records. We got F. We got an F. You got an F, that means. That's outrageous. With the talent we have here in Massachusetts, we shouldn't be getting an F in anything. I'm David Darkangelo. I'm asking for your vote. Please go to my website. It's davein2014.com. davein2014.com. I want to modernize an office, make it more transparent. I really appreciate you being with me today. If you have any questions, you can please find me online. Thank you.
We want to thank Mr. Darkangelo for participating in our conversation, and please make your voice count by voting at the state primary on September 9th. For Arlington Public News, this is James Milan. Thank you.